Hey, good evening, Cape Flat Stories. Goeienaand, Kaapse vlak tussen mense en almal rondom die wêreld wat luister. Tonight we're going to have a very interesting debate, in discussion with a few men. We're going to talk about gender-based violence versus men, and where do we stand and where do we fit in. So we've got Pastor Craven with us tonight again. We've got Dennis, we've got Andre and John, and we want you guys to participate, to be part of this conversation, especially our men. We want to hear your voice. We want to hear how you feel about this. So it's a very sensitive topic, but we need to talk about it. And this way, by talking about it, we can realize what we're doing wrong. But without any further ado, I'm going to introduce Dennis and the team to you, and Dennis can take it from here. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, good evening. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Cape Flat Stories. I'm Dennis. I'll be spearheading the conversation around GBV versus men. We've got Pastor Engel, we've got John B, and we've got Andre, as well as Stan. It's a very sensitive topic that we're dealing with, especially from a man's point of view. And I think why we're speaking about it is because men are very, very seldom seen when it comes to marches concerning gender-based violence. Our voices are really heard, although we are seen as the perpetrators when it comes to gender-based violence. So this panel consists of men that is going to share their understanding of gender-based violence, and then we look at how do we as men walk in this thing that's sitting over our heads as gender-based violence. How do we as men, how do we stand up for it? So I'm going to start off with Pastor Engel, the pastor. Nancy, pastor.
Hi, Pastor.
Stan het mos ons gesê ons moet ons mute man, want ons mense praat saam in die kombuis en aan die ander kamer, so ja. So ek het gesukkel om te unmute. Yes, I'm here, and I'm also one of the guys that are running awareness in regards to gender-based violence, and I'm very strong about the thing about violence against women and children. So yes, but like Dennis said, it doesn't just stay there. There must be stuff that we need to put in place, and men seems to be a bit invisible in this regard. I think just because we generalize this thing that all men is involved with this violence and are perpetrators, it sort of puts a stigma on men, and they take a bit of a resistance in this whole campaign. So what we really need to do is educate people. They are men that's involved in gender-based violence, and they are good men. So we need to call upon the good men to really rally behind this program and the projects, so that we don't sort of ostracize them and stigmatize all men and just paint one banner. And I think that will draw a lot more traction for men to get involved in this fight against gender-based violence.
Okay, thanks, Pastor. Thanks for the intro from your side. Let's go to Andre. Andre.
Am I unmuted? Good evening, gentlemen. Andre Schaffer, as you all know. I'm just grateful, and first and foremost, to be a part of such a really a topic that's very close to my heart, because somehow in die Cape Flats, man, het ding normal kom raak, en is iets wat baie tye ons ken die perpetrators, but for some reason, because we know them and some of them are even family members, we tend to keep quiet because we don't want to bring shame to our family name. En daar is net een van die dinge wat ek nou luitlike oplet het, dat die ding raak nie bitter omdat ons dit weg wil stiek onder die mattie, man. En daar is hoekom ek vanaand deel van die panel is, because we as men, ek is regtig baie encouraged met Stan and Brother Dennis, that men need to stand tall, and we need to tell people, look here, that we are not a part of this problem. And by speaking out, we can make a stand and make a difference, however small it might seem.
Yeah, thanks, Andre, man. Thanks for your intro, brother, man. John B.
Good evening, Dennis. Good evening to the rest of the panel as well, and as our listeners and viewers on Facebook. John B here from MST Community Radio. Gender-based violence, yo, where do you even start, guys? It's been something that's escalated over the past couple of months and years, obviously due to other things, but it's something that needs to be stomped out. It is something that I personally have stood up against since a very young age. And I just feel that we as men need to take ownership towards what gender-based violence really is, and play our role as men to stop the stigma around gender-based violence.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Stan.
Dennis, thank you. I do agree with the gentleman. We need to stand up and we need to, show people our stand against gender-based violence. If we're gonna keep quiet, people is gonna think we're doing nothing about it, and that's why we need to speak out and say it needs to stop. It is something in the colored community that has been there in other communities as well for many years. And the only way we're going to fix this is to speak out and teach the other men, let's stop abusing our females. Let's do good. Let's be better role models, because of gender-based violence, many things has gone wrong in our communities because we are not standing up, as men and taking our places. So I do agree with the gentleman. Something we need to speak about and something we need to air.
Okay, thanks, guys. Thanks, man. Thanks for your introduction. So, where do we start, or how do we start? I see Caroline Peters. She's logged in as well. Hi, Caroline. I know Caroline is with Kalas Foundation, and she's also very, 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 very proactive with this gender-based violence, standing up against it. I know I've gone with her before to one of the marches as well. And what was scary for me is that it's mostly women that are there. And yet we are the perpetrators. You see a handful. They can tell. The mans can tell op your hande, op your fingers. So where do we really start with this as men? Pastor.
Yeah, I think, Dennis, like you said, you were part of a march. I've been part of a lot of marches and awarenesses that has been done across the city, and you see that a lot of men is not involved. So this is the platform where we can start to get men involved and get them involved. And also, like I said in the beginning, destigmatizing the whole thing and get these positive men to come alongside us. And what we must understand and train and develop them, that look, violence it's not generic, it's a learned behavior. It can be unlearned. So sometimes we think like, it's a family generational thing. Like Andre said, a lot of the violence and abuse happens within families, within the confinement of a very close family. So I think sometimes it becomes normal, but actually it is abnormal. But somebody needs to tell an individual this is abnormal. It's a learned behavior. It can be unlearned, and we must get away from the perception, the crime perception or the social crime approach, and we must go more public health, and tell people, look, it's a learned behavior. It can be unlearned. So these processes that you need to follow. I just spoke to a guy now that came out of a 12-year sentence, and he was concerned about people's reception about him as we inducted him. And I told him, look, you can unlearn these behaviors. It's possible, but it will take time. And you don't need to prove yourself to people. Your behavior will be the proof that you are a changed man. So I think this is one of the approaches that we should, take care. Tell them, look, it's not generic. It's not because your father was an abuser, you must be an abuser. That whole thing that people try to teach people, your pa was so and your opa was so. No, this is a learned behavior. And it can be unlearned with the right training, with the right programs, and with the right support, the right awareness, and the right public education. It can be unlearned. I think there is hope that men can change, those that have become perpetrators, they can change. I think there is hope.
Ja. Ja, en ek like wat Pastor sê, man. Ons is geneig om te sê, nou ek is mos so. Ek is so gemaak en so gelaat staan. Hy is mos nie goed wat ons sê mos, man. But it can be unlearned, like you said. Andre, from your side, where do we start, bruh? Unmute yourself, Andre.
I suppose we need to start looking at the man in the mirror first and foremost. If I know that I'm guilty of these kind of things, then I need to be man enough first and foremost to own up, man. And if it is that I need to go to my wife or whoever I've abused, then I need to repent, ask forgiveness first and foremost, and then the process of healing can take place. But the thing is, we, like I said earlier, we tend to hide the things, man, and we tend to justify it, like you said earlier, by my pa was so gewees. Kyk, my pa het my ma geslaan, and as a result of that, I saw that as a child growing up. So it is for me now second nature also to abuse my wife or whatsoever. Just on a personal note, I remember Stan and others when I was 8 years old. I remember going to my mom to another woman's house. En daar het my ma gaan beklei met die vrou because my pa het nou nie huis toe gekom vir 'n paar aande nie. You understand? En nou het my ma letterlik gaan beklei because waar was sy gewees en die dinge. And somehow we think that these kind of things was okay. En toe hy nou huis toe kom to beklei met my ma by huis. Now for some reason wanneer mense afgesterf het of hulle is dood, en dan automatically bekom hulle Engels, man. So wanneer ons ook nou en dan by die kus staan en dan hoor ons die paaste preek van die man en dan automatically is die 'n ander man wat in die kus lê. Now wrong doesn't become right because the person has passed away, man. You understand? So as a child, daai wat ek gesien het my pa doen met my ma, it bothered me for many years, you understand? So I had a choice either to do what he did or to be different. So right then I made a promise that I was never going to lift my hand for a woman ever. You understand? So it's like Pastor Engel say, it's a choice that one need to make, and regardless of what kind of house you come out of, as jy wil verander en die Here vra om jou te verander, en dan is hy in staat om dit te doen.
Quite. Shot. Thanks, Andre. Thank you for that, man. It's a choice, ja. Ons sit met choices. En ons het baie van ons as man wat die verkeerde choices vat ons man. Maar dit is maar hoor van John. John, your side, John.
Yeah, look, you know, I love these conversations because if you guys can watch, I'm always nodding. You know, I did it a lot last week as well, and it's because I agree with what Andre and Pastor Engel has been saying, because I wasn't raised in a very, how can I say, I wasn't raised in an abusive household. Okay, but let me just share something with you guys. So a couple of years, obviously, I was a bit older. I was about 15, 16, maybe 17 years old. At the time, my dad used to play darts. Okay, he was a provincial dart player, he was a club dart player. And you know how darts go. It gets very social. Okay, but with the socializing comes a bit of alcohol involved. All right. And my dad came home the one night very late. Okay. And he started having an argument with my mom. And now he wasn't a very aggressive guy. He was a very passive, mellow guy. He used to sit in the corner and chill. But this evening he came home and my mom laid into him because he was late. Okay. They were so loud that they woke me up in my room. So I came out to come see what was happening. And as I walked in, daar lig my pa sy hand vir my ma. No, the strike didn't happen because I had to stand in, and I actually knocked my dad over and let him lay on the couch. You know? But that for me was already the first sign or first bit of witnessing of any kind of violence against a woman. And from that day, I decided that was who I was not going to be. I wasn't going to be the guy that had to abuse. But then again, we must realize that gender-based violence isn't just about hitting. You know, abuse comes in different forms. All right. Yeah. And that's where I think where most of us as men are kind of getting the whole picture of, but we're not abusing our partners. We don't abuse them because we don't raise our hands for them. But do you remember how you spoke to them the night before? What you said to them about how they look or anything like that. That all is a very, very different form of abuse. And obviously gender-based violence is not just about beating someone. It's about everything else you do against the other person. So we need to obviously figure out and see how we can change that stigma of just understanding that gender-based violence is all about just raising your hand for the opposite sex. It's not about that. It's about treating them with respect in all aspects of life.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, John. Then ek sien jy raak nou net soos John, jy gaan ook net met so met jou kop.
Jy stiek my aan, ja. But John has mentioned a lot of things there, and there's one thing like where I want to focus on. You don't need to hit your wife or to throw her with a stone or something. One thing that is also very much common, in relationships is financial abuse. Our wives need to be dependent on us, and we will decide when they get money. And with that, we also, sort of use words to hurt them. A lot of men will say, "But ek slat nie my vrou nie. Ek het nog nooit 'n vrou geslat nie." But that doesn't make you not an abuser. When you use things like you keep money away from your family, you keep your family away from their family, or certain things that you do, that actually is also a form of gender-based violence. And we need to look at things. There's a lot of things, and like you said, I might have seen my father hit my mother, but it's not who I want to be. But also, if you don't look at yourself and get counseling and get help, that is who you're going to become. Because I've seen men hit women. It's not because they want to. It's because they don't know how to control their emotions. They don't know how to control themselves. And you need to learn a way to get rid of that anger. Because a lot of times we do things, but we don't think what we do. We just do something because our emotions were uitgeblok. And I want to say this, that we need to work on ourselves as men. I don't want to be like my grandmother. If I look at her, she comes from abuse. She's been in abuse for many years, and she's not with us anymore. But I said to myself, I want to be a better man. And I've seen these type of abuse, and it sort of looked right at one stage. It looked right. Ze moet 'n vrou klap, ze moet 'n vrou slut. But it's things like this that we, as the next generation, have to undo. Our sons mustn't do it. It's something that we need to change for good. So I feel that there's many things, there's many areas of gender-based violence, and we need to see where we at, and there is help. We can change, but it starts with asking for forgiveness as well.
Sure. Thank you very much, guys, man. We're speaking about unlearning a lot of things. And weer eens, man, kyk jy, ons gebruik mos skrif, man, om ons te back as ons verkeerd wil doen. Nou, hulle mos na die skrif toe en sê, nee, maar die Bybel sê jy mos nie. Ons kry met sulke. So the unlearning mos is hy submitting, man. Pastor en ouens, that submit. Wife submit to your husband. But who let them, man? Who let them is submit? Like Stan saying, holding the money away from the woman so she's dependent of me. Are we trying to take away independence? Because ek weet nie, man. Wat die control? Wat is die submit ding wat ons van praat? Want ons vergiet die laaste stuk van hy ding ook, want het praat van mans ook.
Ja.
But wanneer het lekker tyd raak vir ons, dan gooi ons jy moet submit, hoor. Bybel sê, ons gooi ons wat die Bybel sê, jy moet submit. Nou,
Sy klink soos een van die oudtydse pastore nou, my bro. Hy uit hier is 'n
yeah, but that's still the mentality of some people.
The mentality, my bro. It's sad, Dennis. Yeah, so like today I did a short encouragement that we were ending off our Women's Month thing, and my wife was ministering on gender-based violence, and in the week I had an experience, man. I became angry at my wife, angry to the point of name and amper, this is baie kwaad. But because it's a learned behavior, you can unlearn it immediately. So it was maybe later that I sent a message and I said to her, I had a terrible week and there was a breaking in and this happened and we working at the center and a lot of stuff went wrong. There was a shooting on one of our sites and I had a lot of stuff on my mind. En toe kom ek by die huis en sy wil ook nog stems op plak, te dink, nee, maar nou jou mond, wat wil die stems op plak? And I hear what you're saying, Stan. You get this verbal abuse and you get financial abuse. And all these together, that is actually part of gender-based violence. So I think the submitting part, it comes from many generations, man. But it's in the word. And sometimes the word gets perceived in a very skewed way. When God made them, he said, I made them male and female. So when God made it was male and female. So die man was gemaak en die vrou was klaar binne hom. So die man moenie wat jy sê 'n bietjie skynsvol soms hy was gedesign met 'n vrou binne hom. And God just took her out and put her there as a helper, not as a submission, but as an actual helper, And this morning I said to them, our women are actually, when we say female, we say a fetus carrying male. Or we say woman, we say a womb-carrying man. They've got all the attributes of a man, attributes of a man as well. So Allah is so sterk. And sometimes the abuse happens because, like you said, the financial abuse. I was a financial abuser for many years because I'm in ministry. So my vrou moet maar net vir my ondersteun en haar geld moet dit in die pot gedruk word and she never had her own money up until recently, which, couple of years ago that I said, nee, jou geld is jou geld, maar ek kan nie so aangaan nie. But I love what you're saying, Stan, that there's different ways of abuse. And what you're saying, Andre, is if we don't make these declarations, then we're going to get nowhere. We're going to get two men to make them make that declaration, even while they're in the state of abuse, to make declarations that they can change and they can make a change. I made that declaration when I was young. Jy weet ons het in die Q-town gebly, daar's 2 slaapkamer huise, daar's niks deure aan nie. As die asbak sien huisies, moet niks deure aan nie. Soos ek kan alles hoor wat in die kamer gebeur. Sê, wow, skop hulle jou ma se knieknoppe en skop hulle haar enkels, en wat jou ma verwiller. And you make up your mind as a young man there, man, laying in that bed, hearing all this stuff. Dan trek jou suster in die kamer met haar man in dieselfde kamer. Nou is julle 6 in die kamer. Haar man knou haar af in die kooi in julle kamer. Sy lê op die dubbelbank. Sy's nou 'n jong man, sy kan niks doen nie. I make declarations. I will never lay a hand on a woman as a young man. And I made a declaration. I will never lay my hand on my kids. Ek sal hulle nooit pak nie. I am totally against capital punishment. Die ou mense kan maar wat gesê het van, spare the rod and lose the child. Ek wou nie van hy nie. I made my declarations. And I think we should get guys to make declarations, man. Wil jy dit doen, wil jy dit nie doen nie. En as jy dit nie wil doen nie, hoe kan ons jou help om dit nie te doen nie? How can we help alter your behavior? Because I'm solution driven, the problem is everywhere. Almal kan die problem identify. So I want to get to a space where men get together and look at what is the solutions and how do we address the solutions and publicly educate solutions in the earth for men that are struggling with gender-based violence.
Yeah, shot pastor, is waar het lê. No, it's to be honest, have honest conversations, man. Maar ons lyk saam vir mekaar lieg, man. Ons lieg aan vir onsself in die spieël. Julle weet mos ek lyk die spieël. Ons lieg aan vir onsself in die spieël. Andre, nou hoe gooi jy die ek wil jou take oor die wife submit to your husband ding, man. Wat is jou take op dit? Unmute weer, jy kan nie praat op mute nie. Unmute.
Daar's ek nou reg. So die Bybel sê dit in Ephesians praat daarvan, yes, but dit gaan vooruit dan sê dit husband love your wife as Christ loved the church. So ja, ons is gou om te quote die parte wat dit sê that wives be submissive to your husband. But we forget the part that says husband love your wives as Christ loved the church. Dan gaan dit even verder wat hy sê do not provoke your children. And is an isolated chapter, but we only tend to focus on the part where we want our wives to be submissive. En wanneer ons praat nou van submissive en dan is dit kykie, ek is die kop en jy moet net luister en almal die klompe dinge. En ek laat ons practical is dat ons vertel van Pastor Engel sê I abuse my wife. It might not have been physically, but I abuse my wife. Ek het 12 jaar terug toe staan ek by 'n punt wat my vrou meer aan my pay. En sonder dat sy weet is 'n probleem vir haar, dis dit 'n massive probleem vir my en nou try ek om overtime te werk om op te catch because vir die eerste 4 jaar ek het worry hoeveel om my payslip te sien nie. Hier skielik leer die payslip, nou sien ek, maar die vrou verdien dan veel meer aan my. So nou try ek om overtime te werk want ek wil opkets, is 'n competition. I ran a rat race with my wife against my wife en sy weet nie af nie. So these are the kind of things, but die ding is ons is nooit ge-educate deur ons passie. Daar was die kind of in die kerk, man, en dis my ding vandag baie. That we keep hearing, kyk ons gaan bid vir jou, man, ons gaan bid. But as jy like regtig waar hy manne kom en vir jou sê, kyk I'm gonna mentor you like for real, man. Nee, kyk die spiritual fathers ding waar hulle net spiritual fathers in die kerk is, but regtig waar mentor jou in die sense dat kyk as jy 'n probleem het, man, praat met my, man. That men keeping one another, again, I always speak about accountable. Kyk die steen, man, ek sukkel met die ding, man. En daar is wat die Bijbel van praat. Look here, if I confess my sins to one of you as my brothers, then the prayer of the righteous will avail it much. En nou kan stand vir my bid, Pastor Engel kan vir my bid, so that môre aan kan hulle vir my vra, Andre, kyk jy, hoe fees jy nou met daai ding? Sukkel jy nog altyd met daai? Som van ons is miskien weer addicted aan 'n bietjie porn kyk. En alles die contribute to GBV because die vrou kom nou sien sê, hey, wat is die man besig mee om te kyk op die internet? En ek weet nie met wie om te praat nie, want is iets wat ek mee struggle. So nou hy dus sit en ons het gewoon geraak om my gesig op te sit, maar hy besaad op te sit. Nee, ek is prys die naam van die Here, ek is alright en alles gaan. Wat hoe gaan dit regtig waar met jou man? En dis hoekom ek het 3 vriende wat vir my vra, kyk jy, hoe gaan dit met jou en waar jy is met die Here? Ek wil niks anders hoor, ek wil nie weet hoe gaan dit met jou sokkerteam, niks en daai is belangrik en wat ek, maar hoe gaan dit met jou? Wat doen jy met jou vrou? Verstaan? En daai is wat ons nodig het, daai manne wat vir my die questions vra, wat ek nie wil antwoord nie, wat met my reël ook is en sê, kyk jy, sy kan nie die ding hide, sy kan nie weghaloop af nie, face die ding nou man. Waar staan jy met jou vrou en met die Here, verstaan? And that's what I believe that we really need, that accountability partners. Again, I always bring it back to this. Cain asked, am I supposed to be my brother's keeper? We need to be one another's keepers, because we need to keep one another accountable.
Thanks, Andre, man. Lekker my bro, man. Ja, jy weet mos, ons het mos nie gesê te mos, man, as iemand vir jou vra, brother, hoe gaan dit, man, die Here is goed. Jy mos ek vra, is die Here nie, man.
Dis waar, ja.
John.
You know, before I even continue with this, I just want to just take a little time to say good evening to our listeners out in Ireland and the States at the moment, tuned into MST Community Radio. And I'm glad they actually tuned into this conversation. It's so important. And Andre, you know, I listened to what you're saying, and accountability came up on last week's conversation and now this week again. I'm going to go back to something I said last week as well. Us as men, we got too many followers and not enough leaders. And it comes back to where do you don't just find leaders, you know, they don't just pop out of nowhere, because I feel that men are a bit ashamed of the situation at the moment with regard to gender-based violence. You know, we apologize for all the violence, but we're not doing anything to change the situation, if that makes sense. You know, because we can apologize for the next door neighbor beating his wife. We can go chat to the wife after and say, we're so sorry that happened to you. But what are we going to do about the situation in order for it to stop the next time round, not let it happen? We can't keep on following the situation and just putting a plaster on every situation. We got to literally take it and go, you know what? Yeah, let's rip the Band-Aid off. How are we going to get you to change your core principles of thinking that gender-based violence is the right way to go? And that is something we need to look at. You know, I think that's a very important aspect of this topic.
Yeah, that's deep. Yeah, John. Now this is what it's about, man. It's again, we're not looking at grassroots stuff here, man. We're looking at the roots, and this is
very much so
the roots that we are dealing with over here. Stan, voor ek nou aangaan met 'n ander ding hier, laat ek vir jou eers hoor. Hoe ek moet Engels praat as mense van Ireland. Before I go on, Stan, can you see your thing there?
But that was how I'll talk to the people quickly. You know?
Yeah, you better go over to England now, please. You know, lose the accountability and go over to England.
You know, gentlemen, I was in town on Friday, and something happened. You know, a few things happened, and there was a protesting happening in front of a church. And these women were standing up against gender-based violence. And what happened really? It's ladies that are fed up with gender-based violence from police, from our people that are supposed to protect them. But you know, I stood there and I didn't get a lot of the information. But you know, I felt, and my daughter also said, "Daddy, let's stand with him," because I cannot tell my 14-year-old daughter, "No, we're not going to stand with the people." But we stood with him because we could see they were, you know, they were in need of some assistance and some support. And after they were finished, I actually asked the ladies, you know, why are you standing here? And they said to me, you know, "Uncle, we are prostitutes, we are sex workers, and we want them to legalize these things because what happens is in our work, men abusive men, they think nothing of us. And for that moment, I realized, and I said to the lady, you know what? Many people are not going to agree with you, but I will stand here with you. And I said to them, it's not about color or race, but it's about you as an individual, as a human being. And I was thinking about the story where how Jesus, spoke to a prostitute, and he wasn't afraid to speak to her, And that moment, I actually felt good because it wasn't planned for me to stand with these ladies and for my daughter and her friends, but we stood there. And that way, we actually said, you know what? I don't see you for what you're doing. I see you for an individual, for a human being. And this is the way we should stand up against these types of criminalities and also show people, that we care as men. Because many times we as men are keeping quiet, and many of the people that are the culprits, they look like us, and automatically we all are being labeled as culprits. So irrespective
Yeah.
of the situation, we need to stand up for our ladies, and sometimes like we're gonna have to stand up, and we're gonna sometimes stand alone as well in this.
Yeah, sure, short stand. That doesn't it feel, as you guys are speaking, doesn't it feel like the roles have been reversed? That women are standing up for everything. If you look at organizations also, it's mostly women running organizations. They're standing up for everything, and we as men, we sitting back, and we now became the skinnerbicker. We the ones now that gossip and sit back and say, ek wil nou kyk net nou wat nou gaat gebeur. Kan jy sien nou ek het jou gesê, ons gooi dan nou daai. Ons gooi nou wat antistini, né? As dit antistini. Ons gooi wie dan nou? Ja. Wie dan nou? Uncle Steiny.
Yes.
Hoe daai gebeur, man?
I think, Dennis, what has happened, you get most three groups of people, man. You get those that watch what happened, those that make it happen, and those that wonder what happened after it happened. So we've joined that crowd. What we wonder what happened after that, but we're not part of the make it happeners. So we must maybe just reverse the roles again and become part of the make it happeners, So we had a very soft approach, I think there was also a time my wife spoke about single wholeness, and she taught young women, man, don't be so dependent on your husband or your boyfriend or the man in your life. You must also be single and whole, You must also be yourself. Try to sort of defend and work out your own thing. And don't go for a man and become dependent on a man for security. And what she said also was, as they actually, when partners get together, they be always out like Andre says, so sy is die helfte en ek is die ander helfte, Dis my ander helfte. So sy is jou ander helfte nie. This is a single whole individual. It's a complete human being, whether it was a prostitute or whether it was lady from the road or whether it was a pastor's daughter. It's a single whole individual that has now become your wife. So you treat her like that. And the minute you say, this is my ander helfte, it's my other half. What half is she going to be? And we tend to make them the bottom of the whole entity, and the bottom of it where the stuff flow through. So when we started out in looking at solutions, one of the solutions we did was interrupting violence, domestic violence, for a second. And the guy said, Pastor, is that going to really help? I said, yes. So I said to them, when you hear any violence in the community, you hear it by the neighbor, by the opposite neighbor downstairs, on Overpark, and how the block of flats was, was allemaal gebly in die boeke. So we lived like that. So when you hear violence, you tend to just take a blind eye and close your ear. But what I said to the guys, what you do now is you knock on that door. And in our culture, it's most allowed to knock on a door and ask for sugar or ask for milk. That's allowed in our culture. So when you hear the violence, even if you have sugar and milk at home, you still knock on the door. And when you knock on the door, you interrupt that perpetrator for a second. Yeah. And he comes and he opens the door and he keeps quiet and he cools down a little bit and you ask him, my mother asked you, don't have a little sugar, please, man. And he get upset, take you. Give him a little bit of sugar. And she comes out with the sugar. You see her face, you see her face, she see your face. She gets a little bit, now somebody knows about it, somebody heard about it. And then he wants to must continue. And then you come back 2 minutes later, you knock on the door again. And I could say, sorry, man. My mother said I must ask milk as well, man. Yeah. And then he cools down a little bit. And then he knows there's people that can hear, and that's a sort of interrupting that cycle. So sometimes
Yeah.
we can't solve the whole problem, but interrupting it when it happens at the front point will allow this thing not to continue, and then for the right help to come in if you're not the right person to help. Because sometimes, interfering in a domestic violence can get so ugly that the person that's trying to interrupt can really just also get embroiled in the whole altercation. So there must be
Yeah.
ways and how to get involved and to interrupt that violence at the front end so that it does not continue. So small projects like that we started across maybe our community, just to say, knock on the door, brother. Man. If you hear, no, don't say you're coming here to stop the violence. That's your wife, bro. Knock on the door and just interrupt the cycle, just for a moment, and then you get the right people to come and to help and to sort of intervene in the process.
Yeah, nice. Nice. Thanks, Pastor. Andre, jou kant.
Ek dink Babyface and Stevie Wonder, I love music, and they sing a song that says, "How come, how long? It's not right, it's
Yeah.
so wrong. Do we let it just go by, turn our backs and carry on?" And in that song, it speaks about how we see these things happen, but yet the girl, she cries out for help, but for some reason I'm too busy with my life, man, and the things that I'm busy with, and I don't hear her, please. There's an interesting, very interesting story in the book of Second Kings, chapter 13, where we know, maybe some of you know the story of Amnon and Tamar. And for me, why it's interesting is because when Amnon went to his father, King David, saying, "Look here, your son raped my sister. What are you going to do?" In verse 21, it says, when David heard this, he was furious. And Absalom never said a word to Amnon after this, neither good or bad. But 2 years later, when Absalom's sheep-shearers went away. So the point I'm trying to make is, Amnon went to his father, who was the king, and he told him, "Look here, your son raped my sister," from different mothers, obviously. David was furious, but he did absolutely nothing. Now here we have a good example of a good king. God calls him a man after my own heart, but he was a bad father because he didn't stand up for his own daughter. Now, for those who knows, the story actually ends very bad because Amnon kills his half brother Absalom because of what he did to his own sister. Now, we don't want to see these kind of things happening.
Yeah.
But because we turn a blind eye for the things that's happening, that is sadly what will happen in many cases. Just in the week, I got a lady sent me a letter. Her own husband went and took out an interdict against her. And now she's at a point where the police is coming to lock her up for violence. But if you know the whole story, this man is guilty. Now he's trying to make his wife look guilty. And it's a sad thing, man. But we spoke earlier about, you said it, Dennis, that as men, we are either gossipers. Now I work in construction, and I have a saying on construction. You see, the reason why every factory is closing down is because all the men are working on construction now. Because on construction we are ons kinders ook net soos hulle in die factories kinders. And that is why the factories are closing down. Because we would rather talk a lot of nonsense, but we will not take a stand for what we believe in. And any form of gender-based violence is wrong. And even if I'm the perpetrator, call me out, man. You understand?
Yeah.
I believe that you are helping me by calling me out. You understand? Again, if when I listened, and some of you might know some of the story, but when I listened to my sister-in-law and the things she went through with my own brother, I couldn't believe it. But for years she was told to keep quiet. Sister, rather pray for him. Pray for him. And that's the sad thing. We are in the church and we understand the power of prayer. Don't get me wrong. We know that prayer moves the hand of God. But there comes a point and a time where we say, man, look here, we need to take action now, man. This man has been praying for years, like this lady that I spoke about now, that got the interdict. Her husband has been having affairs for 30 years. Now that she's standing up and saying enough is enough, Nou gaat hulle interdikte uitdien aan sy eie vrou. So these are the kind of things that's happening right on our doorstep. You understand?
Yeah.
By men that we know. But because he's a geziende man in the community, people won't believe the victim, and that is why I'm speaking out now. The victims are many a time questioned because they don't have a title. As soon as people somehow have titles, then they automatically become untouchable. And that is why they tend to get away with it. I said to Stanley the other day, R. Kelly got away with so many things because we love this music. Now that one woman came out, then another one, and now people are beginning to see, yeah, but it can be true. You understand? But just because we love Michael Jackson and he's singing, what he did to the boys was wrong. So we need to come to that point where we think of the victims. You understand? What is happening to the victims?
Yeah. We have to look at that, because it was easy to go with the one with the status, man.
Yeah.
And as we were speaking about earlier, Stan mentioned it also with the prostitute standing and against gender-based violence. Ons stereotype mos, man. Ons sit mense in bokse. So we decide who we back and who we don't back. But that's not the right approach when it comes to gender-based violence. Wrong is wrong. Verkeerd is verkeerd. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, and no. Wrong is wrong.
Precisely. Very true. Very true. I think I've spoken about this with you, Dennis, before in a previous conversation we've had. When I was living in the southern suburbs in Cape Town, in a house where my parents where I was raised, basically, there was a guy that was living in the house. Okay, my mom had taken him in, and he was kind of looking after, and I say it very loosely, that's very, very loosely. He was looking after my mother at the time. Long story short, he ended up staying at the house once my mom passed on a few years ago. Okay, because he was looking after her, he wanted to stay there. We couldn't get him out. All right, this guy is an ex-26 gangster. Now, obviously, been in and out of prison quite a few times, and he had girlfriends and all the rest coming there all the time, popping in, staying over for weekends, and everything else. But he used to be very abusive, and it wasn't always physical. Those walls in those little houses, the community houses, are very, very thin. They kan alles hoor van enige plek in die huis. So you could actually hear him, even if he was trying to whisper, all these nasty things towards his partner in the room. We could hear it all. All right. And I used to go, and I never used to go and make a scene, obviously, like Pastor Engel says, go knock on the door and ask, for a bit of sugar or whatever the case. I used to just go knock there and just ask him, hey, man, just to try and break that whole atmosphere that was happening. Yeah. But eventually it didn't sink in what I or my cousin or whoever else was trying to achieve at the time. So my thing is, sometimes these guys that are doing the wrongdoings don't realize what they're doing is wrong. They don't think it's wrong. They think it's absolutely normal to treat a woman the way they do. Okay? How do you take care of that situation? How do you actually take that equation completely and remove it from that person's life when they think whatever they've done is not wrong?
Yeah, the norm is that.
Exactly. So how do you change it? Do you take them and lock them up in a little asylum and tell them what's right and what's wrong?
Yeah.
Geef vir 'n pak sla of wat maak julle?
Yeah, we're gonna get there, John. That is where we're going to go next. Let's just hear Stan, and then we go there where you're talking now.
Dennis, you guys have touched a lot of points, and the one thing that stands out for me is whenever you talk about gender-based violence, it's not a very popular topic. People don't want to hear about gender-based violence because, some of these guys that are abusive are men in a society, upstanding men, it's religious leaders, and we're not supposed to, ask questions. Yeah, but hoekom sluts your vrou of hoekom abuse your vrou? And I think also over the years, I just want to add this also, and I want to be very honest with this as an honest conversation. I think the church or the religious institutions has also added to what we are currently experiencing. When a woman goes to the pastor and she complains about her husband, the pastor would tell her, but sister, the Bible says you must be submissive to your husband,
Yeah.
and you must listen to your husband. So there was a picture painted automatically that your wife becomes your slave. And that is a big problem. And sometimes, in some cases, that pastor, that holy man, will then tell the husband, you have the right to divorce your wife. And we know of many cases like this because the pastor don't want to hear about these type of things, or the religious leader don't want to hear about these types of complaint. Everything should be fine. And we need to relook at the places that we attend. Are they teaching us really what we're supposed to know? Are they giving us sound advice? Because there's a lot of relationships that is currently going through a storm, of abuse and so on. It's because of what was planted many years ago, and we need to find a solution. Like me and my friends, me and my school friends. So we grew up together, and 2 months ago we decided that we're gonna start seeing each other more, and that is like every Saturday, every second Saturday. So we started talking about our lives because we were young and we did things that was irresponsible. And now today we laugh about it, but we would tell each other that is the reason why this has happened to us, because our parents never taught us. And we're being very honest, our father wasn't role models. Our father didn't teach us how to treat women. But because we are together as brothers, as friends, let's see how we can better ourselves. Because you know what happens is, the only way you can change this is to start having this conversation amongst men. When you sit at a bride, when you sit at a party, let's start talking about these things. It's not going to work. It's not going to automatically be fixed with the programs that government is going to implement or the boards that we stand with. We are going to have to find solutions in our circles and see how we can change ourselves and our friends.
Yeah, shot Stan. Yeah, I like that what you're saying, Stan. Ons praat mos net karre en goedes mos man om 'n fee. Ons praat nie emotions nie, because it's a no-go zone for us. Emotions, we must not emotional people. Ons sê dan ons is emotional. Ons los die emotions vir die vrouens. Hoe praat hulle daar? Hulle is kinders daar, maar hulle praat alles uit. Ons borrel nog alles in. En dit kom tot by 'n point where we can't keep it in anymore, and then we bust, and we don't know why we're busting, and everything just comes out. And those are things that needs to be unlearned, is how to deal with emotions. We are sitting in a climate now where men were breadwinners, but they're not anymore. How, and Andre, you touched on it. How do you deal with your partner, your wife, your partner earning more than you, when for years you've been earning more, where you were the one that dictated what goes into your hand for food and what is kept back? This climate that we're in, this pandemic shift us into another state for men that we've never thought we would have to deal with, by staying indoors, by losing our work, being retrenched, and not being breadwinners, not being providers, as how we saw it, and as how we stand, like you're saying, how we were taught. We were taught this is how a provider looks like. This is what a breadwinner is. But it actually made us bread losers, because we don't understand how to deal with the emotions when we don't have what we grew accustomed to. So with what John, with what you were saying also, is how do you unlearn normality that is not normal to others? So I'll throw that out. Pastor Engel, maybe you can give us more insight to that. How do your normal that you used to is this way? How do you unlearn normal?
Yeah, I think, Dennis, the situation we're sitting with, it's like we've got this we attach this generational value to stuff. And like Stan said now, that the religious institution and religious leaders was part of the main culprits of promoting this message of how gender violence must be handled, And that time we used to just sweep it under the carpet, Our forefathers, we sweep this under the carpet, So the thing is now, it is public education must happen. Community mobilization must happen. The one thing about this community mobilization, it shouldn't be women standing on the corners advocating for gender-based violence. It should be men standing on the corners. That's the norm that must change. So as a gender-based violence awareness marches, then it must be done by men, not by women. They must sit at home. The problem we have, the big problem we have, is the justice system does not recognize women when they come with a complaint, man. They don't recognize when a woman is being abused, and the way they get treated at the different police stations. I mean, I'm doing this every day. If I was a woman, I wouldn't even go to the police station to put in a complaint about
Sure.
about my husband or what happened. So that norms and that must also change. How? Because our prosecution rate is 3%. In regards to the whole crime system, our prosecution rate 3% to 5%. So as a woman, where does your case fall in? If the big
Yeah.
cases, the gang crimes, the violent crimes, all these stuff, they're sitting at 3 to 5%. So what's going to happen with my case? It doesn't
Mm.
even register on the justice system. So I think that as men, we should come and become a justice partner to our women and to the women of our community, that we will be part of changing the norm and the behavior of men. So one of my programs, I don't know if the ceasefire program. It's a
Mm.
program that I've started, and I started interviewing men that must work for this program. And then I have to interview different gangs to say this guy's going to work for my program. Is that a credible guy? Because, I've been interviewing ex-gang members, ex-prison guys, ex-number guys, and so on to work for the program. The one thing that came out from most of the gangs was, Pastor, that one you can't use, and that one and that one. I say, why not? This is a good guy. He can do the job. He said, no, man. On his record, there's violence against women and children. Then I realized very early on in 2003, 4, 5, that gangs don't respect the guy who's committed violence against a woman and child. Then I realized in prison, it's also a red flag. So I used that as a stepping stone, and I started with my public education from that point to say, bro, you know what happens when you get to prison when you abuse a woman or a child? I mean, you get a black docket, my friends. You don't want a black docket. So we used all the little bit of public education, not to scare
Mm.
men, but to raise awareness, man, that this is
Yeah.
abnormal and it must change. So my thing about public education, I think it should be done by men. You should
Yeah.
really, we must be the maker happiness. And then when there's a march and a community mobilization, then men must be right in front of the mobilization,
Mm.
especially what you said, Stan. Our leaders, our faith-based leaders, must be right in front, because we sometimes quote biblical stuff and stuff under the Quran. We quote it wrong, and then we say this is how women should be treated, and they must
Mm.
understand this is right according to the Bible and the Word of God. So we want to break away from false norms and bring
Yeah.
true biblical concepts and principles back to the table, because it exists. It's just that it's been carrying on from generation to generation. I feel sad when it comes to the justice system, and I must refer a woman to the justice system, because I know for a fact the chances you will get help there is 0.1%. And
Sure.
that's why,
Sure.
as men, we should rise up and and we should make that statement. When we rise up, it's game over for gender-based violent abusers.
Ja, thanks Pastor man. En ek en Andre het oor die gepraat nou oor die weekend. It's action man. We need to take action. The word that we grew accustomed to is an action that we need to take. Love is an action. Love is patient, love is kind, ons ken daai goed is, but when you in that circumstances, in that space, it takes an action to practice patience, to practice those kind of things. So thanks Pastor. Ons as mans, we must rise to the occasion now. We must move, man. Ons moet 'n movement wees. Huh, Andre?
Yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Like you said now, love is patient, love is kind. And wanneer dit ons toepas, man, then we like to use those kind of chapters in the Bible that has almost become like cliche, man. But
Yeah.
after Paul says all of those things in Corinthians, then he comes to this point, conclusion actually, where he says that when I was a child, I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. I even acted like a child. But now I'm a grown man, and now I need to lay aside all childish behaviors. So that is what
Yeah.
action is all about. Look here, if I see a man beats a woman, it's wrong. I'm not going to wait for the police to do something. I'm obviously not going to beat him up so that I can end up in prison too, but he needs to know that, look here, this is wrong. My brother came to me a few months ago and said, hey, now we know our houses are semi-detached. Brother, elke dag, my broer skreef my, he calls me brother. Every second weekend there's a fight next door. This man keeps on beating his wife. And I said, but you his neighbor, why don't you do anything? Understand?
Yeah.
And I understand that we are scared because tomorrow they are back together again, and then you put your mouth in their business. But the point is this, that do you rather want to stand next to a coffin and say, look here, I could have, and I should have, and I would have? Where you at that point now where you could at least, I can't quite be for my forever. He can be angry for me for doing the right thing, but he needs to know that, look here, when Andre is there or Ryan is there, whoever is there, then I need to behave myself with my wife. You understand? And that's the kind of thing that we need to do in our communities.
Yeah.
My neighbor needs to know that if he beats his wife, that I'm going to phone the police. I'm going to phone over and over. And yes, and it's true what Pastor Engel is saying. The sad thing is that the woman comes to the police station and they are treated badly. They tell you, send you from pillar to post. Professionals act as if we are uneducated, most of us. They send us as if we know what they know. Just go to that place there around the corner. Now the woman don't even know where to go, and she ends up going back home. Want sy gaan maar nie 'n saak maak nie because she's been sent from pillar to post and nothing happened. So now she ends up going back to that home where she was abused, and the husband is smiling again, or the abuser is smiling again. Why? Because he knows the justice system will fail the woman. So that is why we need to keep again accountable. We need to be that neighbor hier in the road. Ons moet vir hom vasvat. As hy weet dat hy slaan sy vrou en hy weet jy Stanley bly langs aan my jong. Ek kan nie meer die goed aanvang.
Stanley gaan staan. Yeah. John, your side, John.
Sure, man. I'm loving this. You know, I'm listening to all this, and I like being like second last in the conversation whenever you guys talk, because I hear all these lovely conversations and I go, yeah, and then no. But I've agreed with everything you guys are saying. You know, and I do feel. I mean, I want to share, and I love sharing because I think that it's just giving our listeners and our viewers here a lot more to listen to as well. Because that same house that I was living in, I was talking about, my parents' ex-house, that area has become a drug den. Okay. Gangsters have taken over the flat behind. There are between 15 to 20 people there at all times living in the household, smoking all kinds of things, abusing people, everything. All right. And it's crazy because on TikTok, okay, one of my friends sent me a video. They used to live in the same area as myself. We grew up together. We've been friends for like 20 years or so, if not more. And he sent me a video on TikTok that someone had taken from the house that I was living in and behind, where the community of Parkwood and Grassy Park had come over to that side of the rail of the M5, and they wanted to get into the place because someone was hiding there that had abused and raped one of their friends, you know. And the only force that was there was combat force, you know. No police was around, no SAPS, nothing. Now, do you allow the communities that obviously are coming into other areas now because the guys now run across the highway to hide? Do you allow that kind of action to happen? You know, because I think that's what's happening. The justice system, like we all said, has let everyone down. You know, how do we actually prevent that situation from happening? Because now not only is that guy going to be in danger, but everyone that lives in the same area may just be taken accountable for what's happened because they're actually coming in and out of the same kind of community where those people are. So we need to take accountability. We need to stand up and we need to start taking action and saying, you know what, we as men need to stand up and actually come together. Even if it's doing a flippin' walk or drive or something, you know, in areas that have been struck massively with regards to gender-based violence. And take to the streets and actually start saying, hey, we're standing up against this. Whether you're with us or against us, it's not going to stop us from doing what we need to do.
It's a movement, yeah. We need to make a move. We need to make a move somehow. I hear you, John. Um, we give the minority, actually we give the minority a big voice, say, in our communities. We give them because they are the minority, and we the majority, we sit back and then we moan about it, man, but we don't do anything about it. On a Saturday between 3 and 9 o'clock the evening, you'll get most men either sitting in front of the TV at the pub, drinking themselves or having fun watching the sports, but that's the only movement you get from them. And that narrative needs to change also, man. We are responsible for our communities. We are responsible for
Absolutely.
our homes and what happens around our homes.
Yes.
Then, van jou kant af, brother.
Gentlemen, one of the things that we need to look at is the woman has become very much active in the communities. If you look at CPF, it's mostly women. If you look at the walking bus, it's mostly women. If you look at the people going to church, the attendees is mostly women. If you look at the parents that's attending school meetings, it's mostly women. Die vroumense het begin te nou ons posisie oorvat. And now we
Yeah.
can't get upset when they earn more money than us if they are doing things for themselves because we have given them the platform. We've handed it over to them because we became quiet. We didn't stand up, in our capacity as men anymore. We started giving our position away, and that is the reason why we're in this position that we at. The Cape Flats, if I remember, there was always gender-based violence, but like abuse, but it never had a name. It only got a name recently. But the thing is this: we, as the new generation, we had to stop. What my father did to my mother, we had to stop that.
Mhm.
What my grandfather did to my grandmother, we had to stop that. My uncle one day, and I was very young, and I felt the same, and I didn't talk about it. Took a knife and he stabbed his wife, my auntie. And I thought it was right because this was a 26 gangster. Hy was 'n Arubana. Hy het die nommer geken en men feared him. And in a way, I also sort of idolized him because he was a good, hy was daai ou gewees man. And that was the things that was out there. The men that took over the position as a role model, and we are supposed to change that, but we can't change that if we are behind the scenes. We need to come onto the stage and we
Yeah.
need to start acting and playing our roles because the problem is this: we are keeping quiet. We are hearing the next door neighbor what's happening there. We are hearing our friends are eating their wives, but we're not doing anything about it. And it's time for us to stand up. It's time for us to take our positions back. And like you said, Dennis, as Amelie is the minority. The same with the gangs as well. Not everybody's a gangster, but because of that, if you type in Cape Flats, everybody is being painted as a gangster. You know why? Because we're keeping quiet, and that is the problem that we have. We need to stand up. We need to spend time with other men in our community and find solutions. You guys mentioned it earlier on. We have a lack of leadership.
Yeah.
Leadership, men that takes leadership. You know what a leader does? A leader doesn't manage us. He leads, and others will follow him. And through his leadership, he developed more leaders. He creates more leaders because of his leadership skills. And that is what we need. We need leaders in our communities that can be role models in good things and take back our community, man. Ek is klaar gepraat because it's no use we're going to talk about gender-based
Right.
violence and this and that. I need to do something about it. We need to become more practical about it. And that is
Yeah.
we as men. Like we started our groups a couple of weeks ago. We continue with
Mm.
that and we start talking to each other. And we need to grow it so that the more there are of us, the less there are of them.
Yes. Shots then. That is powerful. That is powerful. Owens, let's take that stand, man. Let's take it from here. I know there's people that's listening and watching as well, men that's listening and watching. If your heartbeat is our heartbeat, man, that we can change the world one person at a time, then make your voice be heard, man. Don't sit back and just comment on this on what you see now here on Facebook and give your comments. Let your comments have action to it as well. And for us as men that's sitting over here on the panel as well, the challenge is for us to get together and start saying, come, let's mobilize. Pastor Engel, you're doing a fantastic job. Let's see how we can walk with you also, man. Let's spread this from just being on online and spirit to being on street. Let's put it on the street. Let's people see, man, this is what it's about. It can't just be words, man. Words become empty and it becomes a frustration. If we're going to depend on government does nothing. I'm just honest. Government does nothing. All they do very well is sit around the table. And that's all they do. Because whatever you put on the table will stay on the table and it doesn't move from there. But here we are. We catalysts of change as men. We see ourselves at that. So let's mobilize. Let's move into it. Let's walk into it as men. Final words from you, Owens. Starting with you, Pastor Engel.
Yeah, I think, I'm actually with Stan there on a final word, We will stop talking now, When lockdown started, one of my statements was, we're not going to go live stream, we're going to add life to the stream. Let's talk shows from us, what we do here, we must really put it in action and actually do it out there. And my last comment, is that, I think whenever there's a case of abuse against women and children, then only certain cases gets highlighted by government or institutions, and that's a little bit sickening to me because this thing is happening all over. So I think what we should do as men going to the ground, putting this into action, is highlight every case, man. Don't highlight like dinges that Andre Chuleka said, the title mentions, when there's certain title cases gets highlighted. But I mean, there's an auntie in the yard, there's an auntie around the corner. Things happen to them as well, man. But also give them that special treatment and highlight their case. And say, auntie D and auntie D, let's highlight die thing. Jou gesig gaan ook op die poster, man. Jy was abused of iets met jou kind, of something happened, or your daughter was stabbed to death, and it just passes by just like that. And that hurts me a lot, Then you watch the news, you see certain people, there's now 6 ladies been, nothing against the way they do the public education. But what I'm saying is that when we go to the ground, we should do public education and highlight every case that we come across, that we know it's meaningful, and this people's story must go out there. We must bring their story to Facebook, to Twitter, to whatever stream you are, and make this people's story heard, man. And when it goes live, and when we mobilize, then the perpetrator will see now, man, this thing is visible, man. He also, all of them, they've got cell phones, they know what's happening. So we must expose it publicly, and then we know these guys will come to a close, because the people, with the minute you go to television, and they should actually, that gender-based violence article there, they should run a whole slide of all those women, and, from night to night, make it something and highlight the woman, even in the rural areas, who's been harmed, in regards to gender-based violence. So I'm just saying, we've got an opportunity here as men to go to the ground, like you say, don't live stream, we live street now, live in the street. And we go there and we make this thing known that every case and every person, it's important to us. And as men, we want to do the awareness. You ladies, you can make some soup for us. Thank you for the soup, but we want to be in the front. I'm going to teach you something, bro.
Pastor, jy gaan in die soppe land met hy.
Ja, man, ek moet hy nou, hy statement terugtrek, man. But we so tired, like Stan said, the woman, the walking bus, I'm in a low, it's woman, man. The neighborhood watch, it's woman. I drive in the night, I respond to violent crimes and stuff happening. Then there's woman on the seat, man, running away because they're scared, man. And I come on the scene, I think, shouldn't this woman be at home, man, with the kids, man? The jacket on, and Department of Community Safety set a label up a jacket and say for the vrouw, that label is going to protect you in the middle of the night when you respond to violent crimes. No, man, this is wrong. I think we as men, we should be that response team. Like many of them soap mark, good for soap marking. They must be in a comfort zone, brother, man. They must actually helping network that they've been, and we must be on the front line. But we're sending our women to the front line, brother. And I mean, Stan, daar kan ek saam met jou stem. Ek sien dit elke dag, my hart raak seer. Even the street cleaning now happening, the CPW cleaning. Woman, brother, man. Lang hare daar in die pad, maak die straat skoon. The men stand with big mugs of coffee, with 6 slices of bread in it, and a woman are cleaning the streets. I'm asking myself, God, what happened to our society? So ja, man,
Hulle is
ek dink die
gewoond aan tea breaks, hy se kom pastor. Die mans is gewoond aan tea breaks. Die vrouens het mos nie daai geken nie. Andre, your last few words from your side.
Yes, man, we should really just come to that point where we take action now. Ons praat te veel, dink ek, honestly. We're talking too much, it's action now. And Pastor Engel mentioned now the streaming, live stream. You know, die vrou wat ek vroeër van gepraat het. She got my number, she said, I'm phoning you, I got your number on Facebook from somebody. And this somebody said, you will help me. And then she explained to me her case. Because I've been going to so many people and nobody wants to help me. Then she wanted to give me her husband. In fact, she did give me his name, surname, 2 photos of him, 2 photos of his girlfriend now. And she said, I want you to put him in the voice because people say you will put him in the voice. And I said, Auntie, ek doen nie sulke dinge nie because tomorrow again they make up and then is Andre die verkeerde een. But the point is this, that woman was crying. I said was crying, saying, brother, I'm thinking about killing myself now because it has become too much. And so it just does that. By talking, gents, it helps, man. You understand? By us creating even this platform, people will at the end of the day feel comfortable reaching out to one of us to say, look here, I need help. Just because we've become literally, I like that part. We always focus on Proverbs 31, where it says a noble woman, but there's a verse in 8 and 9 that says we need to become the voice to those who are voiceless. And that is what I believe that we need to be. There's people that are going through so many stuff, but they're suffering in silence. And we just need to go and put our hands around their shoulder and say, look here, talk to me. I'm not going to put your stuff all over, but trust me enough so that I can take your story forward. And that is why we've got people like Pastor Engel and Stan, platforms that can be used so that it can be brought more to light, man. So that the perpetrators sin, like Pastor Engel is saying, I let Facebook, I let WhatsApp and Allah sin, yay.
Expose them.
Wat gaat die aan? Some of them will repent now immediately and say, hey, before they expose me, let me rather repent. Understand? And that is why we need to be the conscious of those doing wrong.
Shut. Thanks, Andre, man. Lekker broodjie. John B.
Short and sweet, guys. You know, I want to ask one question. When our sports teams get together to a World Cup, they've always got a hashtag there saying stronger together. Right? So why can't we as men use the same hashtag against gender-based violence? Why is it always going to be around a sporting event? Whenever something else happens in this country, we all just go, but now it's a problem. You know? I want to change that. We need to start not using hashtags, but using ourselves as that, saying stronger together. Us as men, stronger together. We have to be united as men to stand up against this. And it is time to stop talking about it. It's time to stop posting things about it and actually take the physical action about it as well.
Yeah.
So
John.
we need to. It's that time now. It's that time. Thank you.
Thank you, my brother, man. Shut. Stan.
Yes, gentlemen, thank you so much. I do agree with you guys there. And just something that I want to say, I want to focus on this. Government can't do this. We as men going to have to do this. They will make the promises. They're going to fight with us. But once they are in power, once they have their seats, once they make their money, they're going to forget about this. If we start today, if we start now, we can change the future, not only for ourselves, but for our children, for our grandchildren. Gender-based violence is becoming out of control, just like gangsterism. We have, we have situations where it feels as if, it's getting worse. But the only people that can change that is us. When we stand together, like John said, together. If we stand together, we are stronger. The problem with men are, and we need to work on it, we have ego problems. We need to get rid of the ego problems or the ego attitude and stand together and fix this that is in a community that is broken. It's first of all, it's our problem. It's not going to go away. Second of all, it's because of us that it is here. We neglected our duties as men in the community. So I feel strongly that we need to unite. Ons is nou klaar gepraat. And Dennis, I want to end up with this. We're going to do next month, Saturday. We're going to go stand in front of Parliament as men. and we're gonna
Yeah.
stand in there with bullets, and we're not gonna say it, we're gonna do it and
Yeah.
protest against gender-based violence, because that's the only way how we're gonna bring this talk into a reality mode, and make people aware we are against this, and we want to also be better men. Like we say, like Pastor admitted earlier on, we also have been abusers financially in some ways, but we
Yeah.
want to be better and we want to be role models, and this way we want to take this movement forward.
There we go. Shot. Thank you, guys, man. Thank you so much for this platform. Guys, John, stronger together. And Stan, you're saying that we need to take a stand. It's no more just the talks. As I will say that, man, it's no more just the talks, and we're gonna do the parliament thing. If it's not happening this Saturday, it will happen the following Saturday, but we're gonna go stand at parliament as men. So you men that's hearing this, don't sit back, don't relax, because there's no time to relax anymore, man. It's time for us to be seen. Hulle wil se stemme te veel, maar hulle sien nie vir ons nie. It's time to be seen. So let's step up and man up. We say that, man up. So this is a time for us to man up. Stronger together, Owens. Let's take this. And if there's anything that you want to put out on social media to say, I'm Dennis Standerman and I stand up against gender-based violence and I believe that we are stronger together, then do it, man. Let's create stuff where we speak life into dead things. Owens, thank you very much for your time. Blessings.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you so much. It was amazing.
Thank
It was an amazing
you,
show.
go on, Andre. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. It was an amazing evening, and I believe that we need to have more of these conversations. We need to talk more about gender-based violence and see how we can fix things. The tyd van praat is verby. We need to do things now for our future. We need to save our future. Vrou mense is so bang for months, and I've seen this on Friday when we spoke to these ladies that stood in front of the church. The police was there, and these ladies were like fighting for their right. And that is the society that we're living in. We're living in a society where a woman don't want to open up to any man because she feels that we will violate their rights, and we need to change that. And we're only going to do that by standing with this woman and by standing with these mothers and grandmothers and young girls and fighting for justice in this country. Gender-based violence is not here to stay. We need to have that mindset. Gender-based violence needs to go. It doesn't belong in our community. On the Cape Flats, gender-based violence are big. It is a reality, and it's something that we need to fix. We as men, not we as the woman, we as men, because it's people that look like us that are the perpetrators. So, people, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for being part of the broadcast. Thank you for the comments. Everybody, we're doing this every Sunday with men, and we're gonna see how we can fix ourselves and fix the future of our society and our communities. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Take care of yourself and God bless.